Hello everybody, Christopher Beast here, and as we all know, Season 7 dropped today, and I figured I would make a video addressing something that I've heard to be the number one complaint with the new season. The number one complaint being, at its core, the change in loot. A lot of people are mad that we've gone down from 3 loot POIs to 1. And I'm just going to be giving the pros and the cons, what both sides who are arguing about this are saying, so that way you can make an informed decision. You understand, at least can see partially the perspective of the people you're arguing against, because I feel like that, generally speaking, causes more healthier arguments that, can actually get somewhere. The core part of this argument, if you're not aware, is that the devs in Season 6 added 3 POIs. You have safe, time safe, and lock container. And they said that only during Season 6 would you be able to get all 3 in an encounter. And now with Season 7, you can only get 1 per encounter. A lot of people are like, well, hey, now there's no way for us to get loot. You're trying to kill the game. You're trying to throw it all behind paywalls. This ain't fair. And the other side's like, well, the devs told you that this was only a temporary thing, and you should have expected it. So let's get into this. First, I'm going to talk about the argument from the perspective of why it should have went back down to 1. First of all, we have the obvious argument that the devs said it. It's supposed to be a special holiday event for us to have all 3. It wasn't really supposed to be anything permanent, and shouldn't really be too surprised that we're going from 3 back down to 1. The next thing is that going from 3 back down to 1 dampens the damage on the already destroyed economy. A lot of people think the Vigor economy is beyond destroyed and it's a horrible mess, and that's something I personally agree with, and they think that perhaps adding all these H-bars and SGs to new players is just doing more damage than any good. However, the counter argument to this would be that new players don't really give a shit about the state of the economy, as the meta in the game right now is pretty overbearing, as SGs and H-bars are pretty much a hard dominant meta. I mean, there is some challenging from the brand new B93 Raffica, but that is an entirely different conversation entirely. The next argument on why, it's a good thing that we've gone from 3 back down to 1 is that it's going to help focus combat flow. A lot of people feel like with 3 loot POIs, people were too spread out and that there wasn't enough combat. Now, I'm going to bring up a counter argument. I've played approximately 4 or 5 hours of Vigor today, and from what I've seen, combat has greatly decreased. This could just be a rare coincidence, but I do think it's important to mention. The final point that I think is one of the stronger points is that top-tier players would win these POIs anyway, and that having 3 of them is just basically allowing a top-tier player to go tap, tap, tap on all 3 and get tons of gear that just makes the situation of the gap between these top players and the lower players even worse. I think this is a fair argument, as there's nothing really stopping an SG or H-bar main from just sprinting up to lock container or regular safe, spraying and murdering any poor Thompson main. Moving on from the pros of this change, we get into the cons and the arguments that are being sent by the people who are angry about this change and who want to see it be reverted. First, it decreases the total loot and encounters. A lot of people are arguing, well, hey, I want to have loot for my shelter. I want to upgrade my shelter. This isn't really fair for that, because now there's not a lot as much loot as before. However, the counter argument for this is the only reason why there was so much loot as there was because of a bug that made all 3 POIs extremely over-generating, and that these would have been decreased anyway, or are going to be in the near future. But their other counter-argument to that could also be, well, the issue really isn't about the POIs, the issue is base loot, and that's a fair argument. Base loot in Vigor is still pretty bad, and hasn't really been good since, 4.0. So a lot of people who are counter-arguing against the decrease in the total loot are just saying, well, the loot should be going back to regular encounters. The next thing is that new players are having far less of an opportunity to get strong enough to fight the current meta. A lot of new players are like, well, this isn't fair. I keep getting shot by SGs and H-bars, and now I can't even get an SG, H-bar, or an MP5 to fight back. The counter-argument to this would be, well, AKM exists, M16 exists, Suomi exists. These are guns that are pretty good for new players that can at least have a fighting chance against a top-tier player. The next counter-argument is there's no way for us to get armor plates anymore. Armor plates are something that is being heavily used by most top tier players now, and if you're a new player who just doesn't have a lot of them, loot POIs is your only way to get them. Not having a lot of loot POIs or only having one makes it very hard for you to get your hands on these things that can and will change the tide of battle very quickly. The next thing is, and the final thing is, that players will now have a much harder time grinding to try to catch up with their current top tier players, as there's less opportunities for them to get loot and less, situations where they can get what they need to get ahead. All of these arguments have their pros and cons, and really I think it's down to subjectivity, as I don't think there is an objective answer in this. So on one side of the coin you have, well, we don't want to oversaturate the Vigor economy, and on the other side of the coin you have, well, new players need loot. My argument is going to be as follows. I think a lot of the issue comes from how the meta is right now. The meta is overbearing and honestly quite frustrating for everyone, including myself. I think if the meta was a little bit weaker and we had, common guns being better and more likely to be used, then this wouldn't be as large of an issue. The other issue is that the loot required to upgrade your shelter just can't really be found in large amounts anymore. A lot of the loot that was available back in 4.0 and 3.0 just isn't really found anymore. Loot should be brought back to a much higher degree as it used to be. On top of all of these things, I do think we should have kept 2 out of the 3. We should always have a safe on the map. I've noticed a lot of times that when the locked container is the only loot POI, nobody goes to it. This is because locked container is really hard to hold, and it's not really worth it because you're going to be stuck doing a stupid dial code just out in the open, and then you get headshotted by an H-bar or an SG. It's just not worth the time. While something like safe and time safe has large amounts of cover to protect you, so you don't, get headshot from 362 meters. I think if we had one time safe or one regular safe, as well as the locked container, I think that would be the perfect balancing ground. As we all know that the nerfs coming to locked container and time safe are coming soon, which will make them much like the regular safe, this seems kind of like common sense. There will be 2 opportunities to lower down combat strain, as well as, them both having low amounts of loot that, when combined, makes it worth it. I don't know, maybe that's just my opinion, and maybe I am wrong because as a top-tier player who, has played this game since 0.8, I can't possibly understand really what's going on the lower levels. And I understand that. I would really like to hear everyone's opinion on this situation because it seems like something that's very much dividing the community right now. Is the need for all 3 at the current loot levels necessary? Or do we really need to be looking at a one safe, low loot level answer? Is that really what we need in the Vigor economy at the current moment? I don't have all the answers. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope at least now when you have an argument with someone else, please formulate your argument with facts and with concrete evidence. On whatever side of the argument you're at, if you just go up to a new player and you're like, hey dude, you're a noob, that's why you're bad. You don't understand, we gotta bring it back, you just want free things. They're not gonna listen to you, and they're not gonna understand why it is that you feel that this change is necessary. On the other side of the coin, if you go up to a top tier player and you say, oh, you're just worried that we're gonna get H-bars and SGs and kill you. Well, that's probably not how they actually feel. And when you say something like that to a top-tier player, they're probably just going to say, yeah, you're bad, and ignore you. Healthy, educated conversation goes a long way, and perhaps you get the community to come with a consensus on what answer we want to see looking to the future at possibly 7.1, which would be the hot patch, the hot fix that we get every season, or 8.0. But this has been Christopher Beast. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time.